Welcome to session 3. In this session I will tell you what happens in the parent colony now that the swarm has left. This is a precarious time for the parent colony, as any queens remaining have to fight to the death. The surviving queen has to leave the nest to mate and then has to commence laying so that the colony can build up in numbers sufficient to get through winter. So the subjects I'm covering here are casts, or also called after swarms, control swarming, where the beekeeper takes some intervention, and uncontrolled swarming when the bees are in charge. I know which one of these I prefer. At this point, swarming is not yet completed for the original colony, which still contains unsealed and sealed queen cells, worker brood, some stored honey and pollen, and approximately 40% of the adult workers. After the prime swarm has left, workers continue to seal queen cells and rear the remaining worker brood so that the colony population rebounds as young workers emerge. The worker brood mortality, however, is high during this period, about 42%, with most mortality occurring in the egg and young larval stages. That's according to Winston Honeybee Biology. New virgin queens begin to emerge about a week after the prime swarm issues, although queen emergence is variable depending on the timing of prime swarming relative to self-sealing. There are many variables depending on weather, size of remaining colony, etc. In most typical scenarios, the first virgin queen to mature issues with her after swarm 2 to 4 days after her emergence, and often a second after swarm issues a few days later, with the next queen to emerge. Anywhere from 0 to 4 after swarms can issue from nests, which means between 1 and 2 after swarms per colony for temperate evolved bees. The worker population in swarms generally decreases with swarm number. In one study, prime swarms and first and second after swarms had averages of 16,000, 11,500 and 4,000 workers respectively. There is a strong correlation between the area of sealed brood when the prime swarm issues and the number of after swarms. Thus, colonies regulate the extent of their after swarming according to the number of workers required to remain in the original colony. Other possible scenarios are that an emerged virgin queen will kill queens still in the queen cells, or that virgin queens will fight to the death until only one remains. There is a considerable interaction between virgin queens and workers following the first queen emergence. Many of these behaviours are designed to prevent the emergence of more than one queen at a time, and also to regulate fights between queens when swarming is completed. The presence of a virgin queen in a colony usually suppresses the emergence of other queens, probably by stimulating the DVAV dances by workers on queen cells containing the mature queens. During the period following the issuing of the prime swarm with the old queen, workers will vibrate developing queen cells with increasing intensity, almost continually vibrating cells with mature virgins inside, particularly after one queen has emerged. These dances on the cells diminish immediately prior to the exit of an after swarm. Snyder, in 2011, found that the DVAV signals performed on queen cells didn't affect emergence success, but did affect survival success. Emerged virgins that were vibrated at a higher rate survived longer, performed more bouts of piping, and eliminated more rivals thus were more likely to become the queens of the colony. Vibration rates of surviving virgins was 3 or 4 times more than those experienced by the killed queens. After swarms are similar in most respects to prime swarms, but with fewer bees, and virgin queens generally participate rather than mated queens. Although only one virgin queen usually issues with an after swarm, other mature queens from cells sometimes escape during the chaotic period when the after swarms issue, and after swarms can contain up to 3 queens. Workers in after swarms do not engorge on honey as fully as those in prime swarms, and fewer young workers issue with the after swarm, so they are less likely to survive when compared to the prime swarm. Virgin queens will begin to emerge and will be piping whilst the queen, still inside the queen cell, not yet emerged, responds by quarking. Piping has a slightly higher frequency at 1200 Hz as opposed to 1000 Hz in quarking. The piping of an emerged virgin will cause workers to freeze, and the combination of the piping and hair pheromones will cause workers to delay thinning the cappings on frag queen cells, and it can prevent fighting with other queens. Workers have been seen to reseal queen cell cappings as the queen inside attempts to emerge as a means of delaying her emergence. Mature queens will pipe, they're known as quarking, from within the queen cell to indicate their presence. It's believed that this indicates to the bees whether there are sufficient viable queens for another cast. An emerged queen announces her presence by pheromones and piping, a series of pulsed high-pitched sounds produced by a queen pressing her thorax against the comb and operating her wing muscles without spreading her wings. Mated queens sometimes pipe before swarming, but the frequency of piping is greatest between the time the first virgin queen emerges and the end after swarming, when the remaining queens fight. Let's have a look at what else may happen. When after swarming is complete, the remaining virgin seeks out quarkers, opens the queen cell at the top and sometimes stings the occupant. Workers are attracted to open the hole out and complete the assassination and extract the dead virgin. If you've been late with your inspections and the bees have been in swarming mode, it is common to find several dead queens on the floor outside the hive entrance when this has occurred. Should two or more virgins emerge at once, they will fight to the death. Queens have large mandibles, and it is these they use to grasp each other when trying to inflict the lethal sting on their opponents. The photograph on the right shows two queens doing just this. Injured queens are bulled by workers who kill them. If no more casts are to be issued, the successful virgin will attempt to kill any remaining seal queens by cutting into the side of their cells. Or do they? It was thought that she stings the immature queens within the cells, but evidence contrary to this in a study by Tarpey has arisen that says worker bees see the perforations in the queen cells as a signal to turn them down, and they will enlarge the holes and chew out and discard the immature queens within. So you can take your pick on which is correct. If you're taking a written exam, I would advise you to mention both explanations. Generally, older workers are involved in workers balling the queens. The queens will fight, and worker balling continues up until only one queen remains alive, and she becomes the mother of the colony. To eventually control swarming, the colony will eventually sort itself out, which is very risky, or the beekeeper must take some action, culminating in leaving only one virgin or one sealed queen cell in the hive, with no chance of the bees making any more queens, i.e. there should be no eggs or larvae present. In an uncontrolled swarming situation, there will be many after swarms or casts which can drastically reduce the bee population. I once travelled 50 miles to collect a swarm and was amused and rather annoyed that the entire swarm fitted inside a teacup. It was a very small cast, although there was a virgin queen present. These small after swarms have little time to build up for winter, and that often leads to the demise of the colony. Bees that throw swarm after swarm are what I mean when I talk of swarmy bees. All bees will eventually swarm, but I want my bees to swarm or attempt to swarm once and then get on with being bees collecting nectar so I can get a decent honey harvest. My advice would always be, don't breed from swarmy bees. Following the end of the virgin fighting and the commencement of tear down of queen cells, the remaining virgin queen will take her mating flights. Virgin queens are sexually mature about 5 days after emergence, and up to then are ignored by the workers. When she's ready to mate, however, the workers will form a court around her and start treating her roughly to encourage her out on her mating flight. It's dangerous out there and she doesn't want to go. They perform the DVAV dance on her up to 1,200 times an hour, so you think she'd be glad to get out of the nest, wouldn't you? When ready to mate, the queen pipes regularly in the hive, probably to give herself a break from those DVAV dances, as when she pipes the workers will freeze. Just prior to flight, fanning bees take up position at the entrance, releasing Nasanov pheromone, and the queen is forced out of the hive. If successful, she mates with up to 17 drones over a period of several days and can have up to 6 million sperm in her spermatheca at the end of the mating process. She will eventually begin laying within 7 to 10 days. A poorly mated queen is one who only mates with one drone or where there is a high percentage of dead sperm. High temperatures can kill sperm. Here we can see the casting up to finish sequence for you to peruse at your leisure. You can see that after the prime swarm departs, 5 days later a virgin queen will emerge. She'll pipe, the immature virgins still in queen cells will quark. The workers delay these queens emerging. A caste swarm will emerge about 8 days later. Again, virgin queen will emerge, they'll pipe and quark. A virgin will then attack queen cells if it's the end. The workers will turn down the dead queen cells and remove the immature queens. Queen mating flights take place 11 to 20 days later, and the queen will be laying up to 26 days afterwards. That's the end of session 3, and I hope you enjoyed it. Beekeepers quite rightly put a lot of emphasis on swarm prevention and control techniques, and we try all sorts of things to prevent a swarm issuing, and that's good, but if you don't actually understand what is going on in the hive in the lead up to swarming, you may find yourselves frustrated at your attempts to control it. I hope I have managed to explain swarming from the bee's perspective, and you will be able to use the knowledge gained to better control swarming in the future. By the way, the beekeeper who tells you he or she has never lost a swarm has a very long nose. Please join me for session 4 where I will be showing you how to make and use bait boxes, as this is an easy way to catch swarms. If you are enjoying these videos, please subscribe to my buymeacoffee.com site where I'll be posting articles on beekeeping. You can also help fund the channel on YouTube by buying me a beer, more appropriate than coffee in the heat of Spain. I'll leave a link for that in the description below. That's all for now. Adios amigos.